hello, my dear pearls. I hope everyone is doing great today. Happy Monday. I am here with you. I just finished reading something very interesting. I've been reading this for a while now. It's a very interesting book called The Greatest Salesman in the World. There's a story behind this book. I will tell it to you one day, but for now, we're going to have something completely different. We're going to be talking about a different topic. Today is a very dear topic to me because this is where I started my whole journey, from that place. So today I'm going to be with you. You're going to have to excuse my dog because he's also very excited. So, Lucky, thank you. He's giving me an alarm or something. So today we're going to be talking about our thoughts and how our thoughts work and the way they affect our lives. So this is basically the topic of today's live. And we're going to be together for around 50 to 60 minutes. So I hope you enjoy the topic. I hope you enjoy everything I'm going to be sharing with you. And I'm going to be sharing a lot of insights that I have learned throughout my journey. And at the end, stick to the end and stay with me because I have a special invitation for you. So without further ado, let's start by me telling you a little story. I shared parts of this story in the post that I posted this morning. But I want to tell you the story because it's very dear to my heart, and also it had a huge effect on me while I was growing up. So basically, I was raised in kind of a medium wage family, if you want to call it. As such, not very rich, but not poor, in the middle. My parents are teachers, both of them. And they used to teach in the same school where I used to learn. So they didn't teach me, they were teaching higher classes. But my parents basically were teachers at the school where I was learning. I was going through I was in that school, I was there for 13 years. So since the kindergarten until the 10th grade, which is where the whole story happened, basically. That year, the 10th grade. And it was actually after the school year was over. But here's what was happening. Since I was in kindergarten for those 13 years in that school, which was a French curriculum school, I had so many people around me who were coming from a completely different lifestyle level. And my parents being the teachers in school. Yes, I know. Thank you. You have a live. You have to go live. So my parents being teachers in that school was putting me under a certain kind of pressure as a kid that nobody noticed, actually. But my parents never noticed this, and I don't think they even noticed until today, because they were very and they still are very kind of oblivious to things that were happening with us as kids. And even now, I kind of understand because they come from a completely different generation. They have been raised in a completely different way. I get it, but I also don't get it because I have been through a lot because of that. So I don't like to blame them because I also know that a lot of those things that I went through throughout my life, now I know that I was somehow the orchestrator of those incidents and of my life back then, the same way I am today. So throughout those 13 years, I was always in my mind thinking that everyone is looking at me in a way that I am kind of privileged because my parents are teachers in the school, and that I'm being taught for free of charge. And we were four. So now, even when I think about it, like 4 kids being taught free of charge in a school that was like quite expensive, doesn't really make sense. The school would never do that. So, and nobody knew any of this. I mean, we were having half a tuition, that's true, but nobody knew. I only knew that later on anyway. So, in my mind, I was always thinking, because my parents are teachers, everyone must be thinking that we are learning for free. And those thoughts that I was having in my mind were making me feel so different than everybody else in my school. So different than all the other students. And different not in a good way, like different in an inferior way, So they are paying a lot of money to get their studies while I was studying free of charge. Well, I wasn't. That was my discussion with myself in my head. And that discussion made me really withdraw from everyone around me. Later on, I realized that I actually did have a lot of people who cared about me while I was in school. I reconnected with them later. I'm going to tell you about this later on. But just now, when I think about it, I put myself in that corner, and I was always that introvert, that I wasn't sharing anything with anyone. It also affected my grades, I remember, because I was always that shy person that, I don't like to talk to anyone because I feel so inferior to everyone around me. Until the 10th grade. So what happened in the 10th grade, after I finished the 10th grade, there was this project with the UNICEF back in Lebanon, where I am from. And I applied for the project. And it was actually a very interesting project. We were cleaning up the cedars forest in Lebanon. So we were tidying it up, cleaning all the wood that would fall from the trees and everything. And we were planting trees as well, new trees. So I was very excited about that project. And I signed up and I went. Of course, when I went, I was thinking, obviously, there are going to be other students from my school. Funny enough, I was the only one from my school. And we were around like maybe 180 to 100 kids from so many different schools all across the country, different levels, different languages. Some of us were French taught, some of us were English taught, some of us were only Arabic taught. So it was so mixed. And when I came in, I was the only one from my school. And I started realizing that I was kind of like an outrovert, actually. And I was talking to everyone. I was getting to meet everyone. I went and I shook hands with everybody. I introduced myself. I was like, who is this? Who is this person? That person was completely new to me. And now when I look at it, well, not now, when I started realizing that that person is the same person who was in that school, putting herself in that corner and surrounding herself with only her negative thoughts and only her own way of seeing things. That's the same person who, when she went to that project, she became someone else. And when I started thinking about this, I started asking myself, why? Why did I make that like such a sudden shift? What happened? And I was thinking there was something happened that is related to the environment, maybe because there were new people around me, and I felt like I wanted to get to know these people. It wasn't really that. what was happening was, in my mind, I'm in a new environment, yes. I'm around new people, yes. But in that environment, with these new people, I was not the daughter of the teachers. I was not the student who was learning free of charge in my school. I was just Maysoon, just a simple 16-year-old girl, 16 I think, yeah. Very simple person, very outgoing, apparently very loud. I didn't realize I was that loud. And by loud, I don't mean like I have a loud voice. I mean, I was expressing myself. I was expressing my thoughts. I was never in the corner when I started that project. And actually, this became my life since then. By the way, I did not go back to that school. I completely changed school after this. I told my parents I didn't want to go to that school. And they had stopped teaching in that school anyway. But my mind was stuck in that place. My mind, my thoughts were always in that place. And this is when I started thinking about this later on in my life, I started realizing that, oh my God, I put myself in a place where obviously I didn't know better. I was a kid, but still, you know, I put myself in a place where my thoughts were controlling 13 years of my life, where I have missed on all my childhood in a school environment. I made it up, by the way, in the last 2 years of school. Like, probably I was the loudest person ever. I never kept anything to myself. Like, I was voicing every single thing I wanted to say. And I want to tell you something. The last 2 years of my school years, I actually went to the school where my father was the principal and my mother was one of the top supervisors. But this time, I was not like, and I could see it, by the way, I could see that everyone was looking at me as the daughter of the principal, but I was not in those shoes. That incident or that project that I went to on my own with completely new people around me shifted my brain 180 degrees, and I became that person who is just Maysoon. No connection to my mom, no connection to my dad being, you know, them being that figure that everyone else looks at in a specific way. But for me, they were my parents, and I was a student in that school for those 2 years. And I had probably, those were the best 2 years of my life, considering that in a school, considering that, you know, those 13 years before were lost, were simply lost. Kind of like when I look at it now, it's like I never lived them. But the beautiful thing about those thoughts that I had and how they shifted, how they changed when I had that experience, this kept on happening with me. So that change did not, like, I never went back. I am always that person who is talking, who is expressing herself, who is now an extrovert rather than being an introvert and being always secluded. And, or, well, I wasn't secluded, I was secluding myself. I was putting myself in the corner. In college, I was also that person who knew exactly her mind and what she wanted and how to express herself. I didn't know then that this is what was happening, that my thoughts and the way I was thinking was the guide for everything that I was doing or everything that was happening in my life. So I was leading my life through the way I was thinking, but I didn't realize that was what I was doing. I only realized this later on, like fast forward to maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And how did I realize that? I realized it when I start asking myself questions about why I act in specific ways in specific situations and why things happen to me in a very specific way. I don't like saying happen to me. I always like to say happening. Things happen for us, not to us. So, because for me, the whole life, the whole journey that we go through, for me, it's a school on its own. Like our life is a journey, is a school. It's not just our life. It's a learning curve. It's a learning passage. We come here to learn. And what I learned 4 or 5 years ago was that throughout my life before, I was leading my life, but I had no clue that I was doing that. I was leading my life with my thoughts, with my brain. Everything that I was thinking about was actually happening in my life without me realizing. Now I know. And now it becomes more of a proactive process rather than reactive. Now I know, and I can tell this amazing machine that we all have it, by the way. We can tell this amazing machine how to think and what to think. And this is where all the answers are. And this is where we start understanding why our life is led the way it's led, or why we lead our life the way we lead our life. So in our brain, those thoughts are mirrored in our life. How did I even think of that incident? How did I even go back to that incident? What was happening in my life? I'll tell you what was happening. 4 years ago exactly, I received, no, not 4 years ago, even before. I think when Facebook started, this is another story, it's very, very interesting one, so that you can understand how the brain really has this effect. And not just that, how your brain is not only connected to you, it's also connected to everything else around you and everybody around you. When we talk about telepathy, and when we talk about how people have, like, their brain waves are connected somehow and they have the same thoughts at the same time, that's telepathy. That's what we call telepathy. This is how powerful our brain and our thoughts are. They do travel. So when Facebook first started, and I didn't have an account actually, my sister came to me and she's like, you have to go on Facebook, it's amazing, you will get connected to everyone in the world and it's so beautiful. And so I was like kind of excited. I think this was in, I don't know, 2006 or 2007 maybe. So I got connected. Now the first person I was looking for when I created my account on Facebook was a friend of mine from that school where I spent 13 years. And I think in my mind she was the only person that meant anything to me in that school, or that I felt that is a friend to me. So that person, like, she was the first one I looked for when I opened my account on Facebook. Why am I telling you this story, and why am I telling you how powerful our thoughts are? In that same time, like in that same period of time, that same person, my friend, she had opened her account and she was looking for me. This is how powerful my thoughts were, and this is how powerful her thoughts were, that we actually connected and decided to get connected again exactly at the same time through the same medium. Not just at the same time, but also through the same medium. And this is how powerful our thoughts are. This is just to give you an example of really when we think of something and we kind of focus on it, it will reflect in our reality. Our reality as a whole is a mirror of our thoughts. And this is why when people tell us think positively, this is exactly why we want to think positively, because our thoughts are going to reflect in our life. So imagine if all your thoughts all the time are negative thoughts. How do you think your reality is going to be? Tell me in the comments, how do you think your reality is going to be if all you are thinking of are negative thoughts? Do you think it's going to be a joyful reality? Do you think it's going to be an uplifted reality, a high vibrational reality? Or you think it's going to be an exact replica of your negativity in your brain, the negativity that you are thinking of, that you are having in your brain? Let me know in the comments. So thinking and having those thoughts in your mind and being aware of those thoughts is like the most important thing that you can do for yourself. Because the minute you start realizing how your thoughts are formulating and what your thoughts are, because most of the time we don't really stop and wonder what we are thinking. We just go with the flow. We just, follow whatever comes to the mind and we just live with it. We hardly stop and ask those questions like, why am I having that thought specifically? What do I want from that thought? What is it trying to tell me? Which brings me to the one thing that a lot of people don't really know what is happening in our brain and how our thoughts are formulating, and why sometimes we have thoughts that are limiting us. When I talk about limiting beliefs, they also come from how we think and our mind, because this is the major processor that formulated all of this for us in our life. Through us, obviously, because we asked for this. It's not like this computer is running on its own. Yes, it is picking up a lot from everywhere, but we're running it. The only thing is that most of the time we forget that we are running this processor and we let it go on its own. This is where our subconscious mind starts taking control, and those limiting beliefs start surfacing and start stopping us and controlling our life and keeping us in our what people call comfort zone. And this is where I'm going to be specifically talking about our ego. And what I mean by ego here, I'm not talking about, people think when they talk about ego, this guy has a big ego or something like that. This is not the ego that I'm talking about. That ego that people associate with arrogance That's not the ego I'm talking about. Our ego is a very, very important part of our reality, our brain, our living, our thoughts, our think, everything. Because our ego is like, I like to think of the ego as the police. Our ego is the police, but the police, not the police that is, punishing. No, the police that is trying to keep you safe. The police that is always protecting you. That police. So the ego that we go when we go through our life, we are put in situations. We are not put in situations. Let's be clear. We put ourselves in situations most of the time without realizing, but we do put ourselves in those situations. And our ego, the job of that persona or that police officer is to keep us safe. So what happens here? If we are like, let's say we want to do something new in our life, something really out of the box, something that we've never done before, something that could, cause somehow our adrenaline to go high. Like, if let's say when I decided, and I did it, to jump out of a plane, the thought itself, if you want to think about it, it really defies every maybe sanity thought that anyone could have. Like, why would anyone throw themselves or jump out of a plane, right? So when I decided that I wanted to do that, the first thing that my brain came up with, no, this is dangerous. You're gonna die. I'm not gonna let you happen. I'm not gonna let you do it. You're not doing this. So these are the thoughts that come to us from our ego, because our ego's job is literally to keep us safe. And to our ego, safety does not necessarily mean what it means to us. For me, in that specific incident, for example, I wanted to jump out of the plane. I wanted to feel that rush. I needed that in my life to move from one thing to another. And I wanted to do it. So I did not really listen to my ego then. I did jump. Amazing experience. Personally, I say everyone should do it, because it's such a liberating experience to feel yourself like literally flying. So that's not the point though. The point is that my ego was trying to keep me safe. And I willingly decided that I'm gonna ignore my ego. And this is a very important point. When you should listen to your ego and when you should ignore your ego, or you would want to ignore. I don't like to use should, but when we want to choose to listen to our ego and when we want to choose to ignore. And I don't say ignore. By ignore, I don't mean just not listen. When I say ignore, I actually mean, and this is also something very, very important for anyone to practice. When your thoughts or when your ego is trying to tell you to be afraid or to be careful or to worry about something, it's trying to protect you, right? What you want to do, or what you want to choose to do, is to acknowledge what your ego is trying to tell you. Not just put it on the side. Acknowledge what your ego is trying to tell you. And understand why your ego is trying to tell you this. Because maybe your ego is right. Maybe this time you should listen to your ego. And maybe this time you want to ignore your ego and go through with what you want to go through. So for me, Like, for example, me taking this whole journey of becoming myself today, this person who is sitting here and talking to you. If I wanted to listen to my ego when I started my journey, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be doing this. I wouldn't be sharing my experience with you, trying to support you the way I know how, because that's how I supported myself. I've been through this. That's why I'm sharing my experience with you. If I wanted to listen to my ego when I started thinking of this, I wouldn't be doing this now, because my ego was, no, stay in your comfort zone. Where are you going? What do you think you're going to accomplish doing this? And I knew I was going to accomplish a lot. And that's why I did not listen to my ego. I actually told my ego in my brain with my thoughts that I hear you and thank you. Thank you for trying to protect me. I really respect that and I hear you. But I also want to do this and I want you to trust me because I know what I'm doing. And if anything comes up, come back again and warn me again. And I will be here to listen to you. And if I find that you are right, I will follow you. But this time I want to do things my way. And I want you to back me up. The minute I actually recognized those thoughts and had this discussion, by the way, this discussion is not like I'm telling it to you now. It's not me talking to my, hey, listen, this is not gonna happen, okay. It is actually my brain doing the thinking. I was doing this thinking inside my brain. Those thoughts were talking to those thoughts and those thoughts were saying, yes, no, until the decision was made. And obviously the decision was made by me, my thoughts. And that was my ego that was trying to protect me, not someone else's ego, you know? So this is where the importance of our ego is. And this is where also we want to remember that our ego's there to help us. Our ego is there to guide us. And it's our call to either follow that guidance if it makes sense to us, if it's really something dangerous or something that is going to drastically change our life in the wrong way. Yeah, because I drastically changed my life when I jumped out of that plane, by the way, because I felt that freedom. My life since then became different because of that freedom that I gave to myself, because I did not listen to my ego, although it was a dangerous thing to do. And again, today, what I'm doing today, if I had listened to my ego, I would be still in my own cocoon, doing my own thing with myself, rather than sharing what I have been through so that I can teach from my experience, so that I can not teach, I can share from my experience. I don't like the word of teaching because that's not what I'm doing. I'm just sharing what I have been through, because I know also that a lot of people either are going through what I have been through, or they have been through what I have been through already. Or maybe they might be going to go through what I have already been through. And this is why I like to share. This is why I want to be the person who can guide you through those incidents, because that's what happened to me. And if this is something close to what is going with you in your life today, this will be an eye-opener for you, and you will start thinking, oh my God, okay, let me see. This makes sense. Okay, let me start having that discussion in my mind with my ego, and let's see where it's gonna take me. Am I going to be stuck where I am, or am I going to change my life, or am I going to excel, or am I going to be, let me stay here. I don't want to do this now. I personally believe that every person will reach a place in their life where they will have this shift. Every single person. I truly, genuinely believe this. But each one will have it in their own, I like to call it divine timing, you know, because it is your own divine timing. But I genuinely believe that we all go through this at one point in our life. And what I want to be able to do is, if you are going through this today, I want to be able to help you if I can. So that's one thing, and this is why I'm doing this, and this is why I did not listen to my ego when my ego was telling me, no, don't do this. It's not safe. My ego was afraid of what people would say, and this is a limiting belief. The judgment of others, the fear of going out and talking and you know, expressing myself. Again, what would people say? Would people listen? Would anyone be interested? This is what my ego is telling me. And I said, you know, even if nobody is interested, I truly believe that this is why I'm here. And I want to do this. Because if I don't do this, and if I survive to become like, I don't know, 90 years old, and I look back on today, but not having done this, I would definitely, I know it in my bones, like to the last atom in my being, that I would regret not doing this when I'm 90. So that's why I'm doing it. That's why I didn't listen to my ego. And when you don't listen to your ego, or when you actually listen to your ego, it's not you're listening to your ego, that's why you don't listen. You choose not to listen. But if you don't know that your ego is talking to you, you wouldn't be listening. And this is what brings me to the second point that I want to talk about, is how much it's important to have that self-awareness, understanding how you, in your brain, how you think, why you think the way you think, what affects your thoughts. So how do you think, and why, and how, and what is, like, what's the trigger for those thoughts? What's affecting your thoughts from the environment, not from within? And then the why is from within. Why are you thinking this way? It's something that you must have felt, or something that you must have known, that is expressing itself in your thinking. Sorry. So when you start having this self-awareness, this is when you start recognizing the ideas or the thoughts that come to your mind, or the thoughts that you have in your mind, that you're putting in your mind. That self-awareness is key when you want to move from someone who is either stuck or not really figuring things out. When you start doing that self-awareness exercise, and you start understanding or questioning the why, the what, the how, or the when, the how, basically, the why, the what, the how. When you start questioning, this is when your self-awareness becomes like a steps up. I like to say it steps up. It's like, okay, now I'm taking charge. I want to understand what is happening up here. And I don't just want to understand, I want to be able to control, because you are that control, you are that guide. But again, when we go through our life, the way we go through our life, and the way we just follow the flow, and the way we just let go of everything to our, like the majority of our brain is our subconscious mind. So we let go, like everything is happening there. Everything is happening in that 95%. And this is how we breathe, this is how we eat, this is how we smell, this is how we see, this is how we walk, this is how everything happens for us. This is how we get behind the driver's wheel and drive in a car. Like, we don't think of these things. Do you think that, okay, now I'm gonna breathe? No, it happens naturally. It happens because it's all processing in our subconscious mind, and it's just going. When we start asking and when we start wondering, what if I do things differently? What if instead of doing this, I do this? And this is where, when you start asking this and when you start having those question marks, this is where you start noticing your ego jumping to the scene. Because before, you don't really understand what's happening. You're just doing the actions or the reactions in that case. You're just reacting to whatever is happening in your brain, but you don't really know what's happening there, what's the process, who is thinking what, and who is saying what, and who is answering what in your brain. When you start asking those questions, and your ego comes to the scene and starts telling you yes or no, be careful here, be careful there, or this is going to happen here, this is going to happen there, then you start seeing, oh my God, all this is happening in here? Yes, all this is happening in here. And you are the one controlling all of it subconsciously until that point. That point, when you start having that self-awareness, that is the point when that discussion starts, where the shift starts happening for you. This is where it started happening for me. The minute we wonder the why, the how, and the what, and we start getting answers because we are questioning, and we start digging for those answers. We don't just get them like that. We start digging for them because we really want those answers. We really want to understand what's happening in our brain and why we think the way we think. And when you start having this self-awareness, you start realizing that your thoughts are actually a mirror of your reality. In fact, your reality is a mirror of your thoughts. When that self-awareness exercise starts, then you start seeing things. Then you start like, oh my God. I'm going to share something with you. So my friends, all my friends, with no exception, think that I'm a very, very, very positive person. And I am, actually. I am a very positive person. Initially, I don't know why I was or I am a very positive person, but maybe because I don't like drama, that's for sure. You know, although it happened to me a lot in my life. I was asking for it. Now I know, but before I didn't know. But now I know that that was a reflection of everything that was happening in here, that I was thinking. And yet, I was still positive. So my friends would always tell me, oh my God, how can you be so positive all the time? I want to tell you something. You know, that positivity in my brain, this is what made me survive all the ups and downs that I had throughout my life. When I started my self-awareness journey and I started understanding my positivity in my brain, I realized why this positivity was there. Because that was the one thing that was helping me go through all those steps in my life. And I started this live by asking you, like, imagine if everything that you are thinking of is always negative. How would your life be? Like, you wouldn't be joyful. I'll give it to you as an exercise. If you don't believe me, try it. Just you try it. Try to be positive all the time. And I'm not challenging you, I'm just asking you to try it, because it will have an amazing effect on your life. I mean, I'm not gonna get anything out of it. It will help you, it will support you being in that positive state of mind, which will reflect in your reality in simple positivity. So why not? Try it. And if you want, try the other side. Try the opposite. Like, try to only, like, I don't want, most people, by the way, don't need to try this. A lot of people always have negative thoughts, and they will see it happening in their life, but they don't know that this is where it's generated. It's starting here before it becomes in their reality. For me, it was happening to me as well. For me, it was happening for me as well before I started this whole journey, but I just didn't know. Now I know. Now I know that this is how it works. My thoughts reflect in my reality through my emotions, through my actions, through my words. Like, when you go through this, and when you start understanding how your thoughts, how powerful your thoughts are, everything else becomes like, it's like a snowball. So the minute it starts rolling, I promise you, there's no stopping it, because it's such an amazing feeling to know that you are the one in control of everything that you are, that you have or you don't have in your life, of everything that you go through or you don't go through in your life, because this is your choice. You're the one making that choice. You're the one deciding, am I doing this or that? Most of the time, subconsciously. And now I'm inviting you to do it with full awareness. I'm inviting you to open that discussion with yourself, with your mind, with those thoughts. Open that discussion and start that journey of knowing that you are the one who is in control, and actually taking control of your thoughts and hence your life. That's how it works. My friends, my pearls, people, this is how it works. This is how powerful your brain is. This is how powerful your thoughts are. And one thing I wanna stress on, affirmations, I'm sure you know a lot, or you hear a lot about affirmations. Why affirmations work? Affirmations are basically affirmations. So they are statements that are stating a fact, okay? Regardless if that fact is actually factful or not. That's why they are like affirmations make your brain think differently. They put your brain in that very specific place of affirmation. Why affirmations work? Why? Because of that repetition process. Joe Dispenza says, right now, brain cells that fire together, wire together. So the more you talk or the more you do things in a specific way, the more that circuit will be in that way. And that's why repetition is key. And this is also another way of stopping things from happening. So if we understand how powerful our brain is, and we go through that process of changing how we think from one way to another, it won't happen just like that, but it will happen with repetition. The more we repeat, then it becomes a habit. And this book has got a lot to do with habits. This is why I mentioned it at the beginning of the live. So repeating things is very important for the thoughts to formulate and to become not innate, to become part of our subconscious mind. And this is, by the way, how the subconscious mind works, because of all the repetition. And that's what I call conditioning throughout our life, because we're going through the same thing over and over and over again. It becomes stuck in our mind that this is how it works, because of all the repetition that happened throughout all those years. So to change that, like 180 degrees shift, you need to do that repetition as well, but in that shift, from a completely different place, from a new place, new thoughts, new ideas, more positivity, more like generating joy for yourself, generating happiness for yourself, generating high vibrational emotions and feelings, instead of being stuck in that vicious circle of repeating the same mistakes, like I was talking about last week, repeating the same things over and over again, without any change. Because like Einstein says, that's the definition of insanity, is repeating the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. It's not gonna work. Lucky agrees with Einstein. So basically, your thoughts are reflected in your life. This is what's happening. You think, it happens. You think this way, it happens this way. You think this way, it happens this way. So the call is yours as to how you want to think, as to what kind of thoughts you want to have. Do we want to be stuck in those negative thoughts, or those thoughts that are bringing us down? Or do we want to bring high vibrational thoughts to our mind, bring thoughts that will elevate us, that will put us in a more joyful state, a happier state, even more informed state? Because awareness is like, awareness and knowledge for me are the same, and knowledge is power. So when you are aware, you are powerful. And the minute you become aware, you start doing the things that you know are going to help you and are going to work for you, rather than against you. So this is what I did. What I did when I started becoming aware of things, of how my thoughts were formulating, I started digging to understand more, and I studied, and I took like all the courses that you can think of. I spent so much on myself to be where I am today, and it was worth every single penny, I tell you, because I know now what I can do with my thoughts, and how much I can, and where I can get, just by adjusting my thinking pattern. my thinking process. And it's not like, I'm not saying again, it's not something that happens overnight, but the minute you are aware, at least, you know you have that power, you have that chance to do something for you, to start something for you, to bring yourself to a place where you want to be. Through going through that process, understanding how you're thinking, why you're thinking that, and what these thoughts are. And giving room to your ego, who will come to try and either protect you, or just because your ego knows that your comfort zone is good for you. It's your comfort zone. You're fine. You're happy there. Why do you want to venture in the unknown? I say, why not? Why not? I mean, I would think how boring my life would have been if I haven't done all of this. It would have been the same old story over and over and over again. No, I want something exciting. I want to know that I can do a lot. And I want to do a lot, not just to know that I can do a lot. I want to do a lot. And I know I can, because I'm the one who is conducting this whole orchestra. I am the conductor. I'm the one who's leading that symphony. And I like to think of my life as a symphony because I love music. So for me, it's like, yeah, my life is a symphony. And I'm writing those notes. I love this analogy. It's nice. So I am happy to be in control of my life. And today I really want to invite you to think about it this way. Think about being happy because you have the self-awareness. Being happy because you know how you're thinking, why you're thinking that, and what those thoughts are, and how they're going to reflect in your life, because they are. So today, this is what I want to invite you to do. I want to invite you to trigger yourself, to trigger your brain, and start asking yourself these questions. Start wanting to know all those answers. And start recognizing those times when your ego is trying to tell you things. It's an interesting process. It's really a very interesting process when you acknowledge the presence of that persona in your brain that is trying to protect you, that is trying to keep you safe, or that's trying to keep you in your comfort zone. And sometimes our comfort zone is not good for us. Sometimes our comfort zone is only keeping us stuck. Is this what we want? That's certainly not what I wanted for myself in my life. And this is why I'm here. This is why I'm doing this. And this is why I'm extending this invitation to you. Think about it. And the one thing that is important to know, that when you start this, it's gonna be, personally, I truly, genuinely believe it's gonna be an amazing journey for anyone who goes through it. Because you're exploring something that is really like huge. The capacity that we have is amazing. And we are limiting ourselves so much when we don't go that extra mile of understanding how this brain of ours work, and how our thoughts are leading, and how our thoughts are what we see around us. These are our thoughts. This is a reflection of what we think, of what we want in our brain. Whether we know it or not, that's another story. I'm inviting you to actually know it. And then when you know it, you are controlling it. So, because I did this journey, and because I've been through it, and I know how, like, it's not stressful, but it's a lot to do, a lot to take in, a lot to go through. It's an amazing thing to do. And sometimes, I mean, personally, if I had someone helping me throughout those years, I would have done this way much faster. I would have been here 4 years ago doing this. But I had to do it on my own. I had to go through that struggle on my own. I had to gather all that information on my own. I had to learn on my own. I had to put everything together on my own, which is amazing because now I have all of this information that I'm sharing with you. So I kind of like put it together for you. I want to think about it this way. I put all of this together for you because I don't want you to go through that struggle that I went through to get here. Because I had to go through so many different things, so many different learnings, and I'm putting all of those in one place. And I'm sharing my experience from that place. So if this is triggering you just a little, I want you to tell me that, Maysoon, this is really triggering me and I really want to dig a little bit deeper in this. And I invite you to get on a call with me or to reach out to me just in the comments if you want. Just say aware, type aware, like in capitals. I will reach out to you via Messenger, or I can also send you a link. We can get on a call and we can start exploring what you are going through and where I can help or add value. So if this is something that is triggering or that's important to you, or that you think that, yes, I want to do this. Thank you, Maysoon, for highlighting this to me. Please let me know, and I will share a link below and you can get on a call with me on that link and we can together become one in figuring things out for you. So with that, I'm gonna say thank you so much for staying with me till the end of this life, and I hope I will be able to shed some light somewhere in your life. I hope I was able to do that today, and I'm doing this every week, people. So I'm not going anywhere. I'm doing this every week. Anywhere I can help, any way I can help. Remember, write aware if you want me to reach out, and I will send you a message on Messenger, or I will send you the link if you want me to call, if you want to get on a call with me. And with that, I'm gonna say ciao, ciao, and I will see you again next week. Ciao, ciao.